Get ready for your daily dose of WordPress and web development tips, tricks, and insights to help you find success with WordPress. You're listening to WP the Podcast with your hosts, David Blackman and Tim Streifler.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of WP the Podcast, brought to you by WP Gears. I'm David Blackman.
And I'm Tim Streifler.
Today we're going to talk about categories versus tags with WordPress for SEO. Before we dive off into this topic, you may wonder what is the difference between a category and a tag, and believe it or not, there are some differences. First of all, categories are broad groupings of blog posts, content that's on your website. You can categorize it. And tags describe specific details within the post. So you may have a category such as Divi, for example, the Divi theme on your website and blog posts. And you may have a tag for Divi headers, which specifically focuses on content dealing with the Divi header. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea, concept of the difference between categories and tags in WordPress. And now we're going to talk about why it's going to be good for SEO and why you want to even do them or use them.
Yeah, definitely. So SEO is all about organization of content and helping the search engine understand your blog. And so WordPress in and of itself is really good for SEO because WordPress has really good structure in terms of being well organized. And so the more organized that your blog is and how the hierarchy works, the better it's going to be for SEO. And so WordPress has this built in because of the fact that it has categories and tags and so forth, but you just have to know how to use them, right? And so as David mentioned, categories are more broad, tags are more specific. And so if you think of like the hierarchy of your content, the blog is the overarching theme of what you're teaching, what you're covering, whatever it may be. And then categories breaks down from there. So you have one blog, but then you have categories where you might have 3 to 5 different categories that are major things that you cover on your blog. And then tags are smaller, more specific topics covered on your blog. And so you might have 1 to 2 you might have like 4 to 10 tags per post. Where a blog post might only have 1 to 2 categories, right? Typically only one. Sometimes it might fall into 2 categories depending on what it is. So a really good example is like a travel blog, right? The travel blog is the overarching theme of the website is travel, right? But then within travel, you might have different categories for, the major continents, right? So you might have, you travel a lot to Europe, so you have a Europe category, and then you might have another category for, Australia and New Zealand, and then you might have another category for, the Caribbean islands, or whatever it may be. And then within those categories, you have a bunch of different tags. You might have a tag for beaches, and then it shows all the different beaches that you've gone to. And then you might have another tag for food, so all the posts of the food that you've had while you've been traveling. And so you have those overarching themes of your blog, and then within that you have a bunch of little things. And so again, a blog post should typically only have 1 to 2 categories that it falls into, usually 1, but it might overlap, as I mentioned. And then you might have like 4 to 10 tags per post. And so kind of the rule of thumb here is you only want to tag something if you think you're probably going to have that come up again. So it's like you don't want to have 1,000 different tags per blog post for every little thing that you're describing on your post. But if you're going to have more posts, in our example about beaches, okay, well then let's do a beach tag. If you're probably going to cover food again, okay, let's do food. But like you don't want to, if you visited, for example, the Eiffel Tower, and you probably won't cover more things about the Eiffel Tower, then you might not want to do a tag because you don't really want tags with only 1 post in it. All right, David, I talked long enough.
Yeah, that's a lot of really, really good, valuable information. I'm going to throw a bonus tip out here for categories versus tags. Typically on a website, depending on the size of your website and stuff, Google and search engines typically like you to limit the number of categories. So don't have 100 categories on your website. I know back in the day when we started blogging, a typical website, a good number rule of thumb was to not have more than 7 to 10 categories. That way Google could, determine what you were an authority in. So obviously Tim and I are WordPress, Divi, and we have some other categories, and Google knows we're authorities in this specific niche on the web. So there's your bonus tip. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how to have effective virtual client meetings with all the coronavirus lockdown, everybody, stay-at-home orders and stuff. A lot of work is transitioned, and we felt like it was a good time to talk about how to have client meetings virtually with the social distancing. So until tomorrow, we'll see you then.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We've come to the end of today's episode of WP the Podcast. Join us tomorrow for more daily tips and strategies designed to help you run your WordPress business toward success. Remember to subscribe to WP the Podcast so you can stay up to date with each episode. And don't forget to rate and review us. We'll see you again tomorrow right here on WP the Podcast.